You know, when we think about prime football in the 90s and 2000s, Milan is one of the first names that comes up. From the brilliance of the Arrigo Sacchi team, to the steel of the Fabio Capello team, all the way to the flair of the Ancelotti team. They had everything: the leadership of Franco Baresi, the class of Maldini, and the lethalness of Andrei Shevchenko. It all sounds too remote these days, but believe it or not, we were pretty good once upon a time. It's honestly been a privilege to witness all of this in a lifetime. That being said, all these years had one figure in common, and that's Silvio Berlusconi. Love him or hate him, he literally transformed Milan into a super club that was far ahead of his time. But we're not here to talk about Silvio Berlusconi. We can leave that to the man himself, since he's pretty good at talking about himself. We all know what happened after he purchased Milan, but the question is, what was going on before he purchased the club? Well, stick around to find out. Right, so let's go all the way back to the 80s. It's safe to say that the early 80s were not kind to us. Before Marco van Basten, there was Mark Haitley, and before Ruud Gullit, there was Ray Wilkins. But most importantly, before Berlusconi, there was Giuseppe Farina. This man was a polar opposite to Silvio Berlusconi. Unlike Silvio, he was nowhere near as charismatic as Berlusconi, and he didn't have what it takes to run a prestigious club. I mean, well, it's not like there was much prestige left around the club at the time. You see, after the glorious 1960s, where Milan won the European Cup, the club was honestly a shell of his former self. I can honestly make 5 videos of all the things that were going wrong at the club, but in the interest of time, here's the compressed version. The year is 1979, and Milan just won its 10th Serie A title. And with that came the right to wear a golden star on their shirt. There was a sudden optimism around the club. But hey, we're talking about the Milan of the early 80s, which wasn't the most stable club around. In March 1980, the club was involved in a massive scandal. But before we talk about what happened to Milan, don't forget to leave a like or comment. It really helps out the YouTube algorithm, as a lot of time goes into making these videos. So, in 1980, Milan was heavily involved in the Totonero scandal. The scandal was around the betting syndicate that paid players and officials to fix the results of the matches. And as a punishment, Milan was relegated to Serie B for the first time in its history. Milan won the promotion back to Serie A in one season, but was relegated back to Serie B the season after. And this time, it wasn't just due to a scandal, it was because we were just terrible. Like, really bad. Eventually, Milan got back to Serie A once again and finished top 6. Things were looking rosy once again. But hey, this is Milan we're talking about, so there's always something on the horizon. Because around this time, the club was ridden with debts. On the field, Milan was doing okay given the circumstances and was managed by Niels Lidholm, who gave a certain Paolo Maldini his debut at 16. But off the field, the club was in a mess. Clearly, Farina didn't have the financial clout he always claimed to have. Player salaries were not paid for ages. Even transfer fees dating back to seasons before were not paid yet. And honestly, there was a legit fear of the club going bankrupt. Eventually, Farina was open to sell the club, and a certain Silvio Berlusconi purchased Milan. And the rest, as they say, is history. Or at least the history that we'd like to remember. So, what do you think about the subject today? Obviously, we all know what happened after, but not many of us talk about what was happening before Silvio's purchase of Milan. I'm Football Drawn, and I'll be making similar content for Sempre Milan. If you enjoyed this kind of content, well, let us know in the comment section below, but be nice to each other. Keep an eye on the Sempre Milan channel, because the guys are up to some amazing stuff. And for my non-Milan content, feel free to visit my channel in the description as well. Thanks for watching, and Forza Milan!